Welcome to the Real Life Artist Podcast. This is the show where we discuss the challenges that come with being an artist, as well as ways you can overcome those challenges through practical applications, shared experiences, and general discussions. My name is Luke. I'm your host. Thank you for tuning in today. Before we get into today's episode, why don't you grab your favorite beverage or snack, or if you are in your car going to work or taking a road trip, sit back, relax, and enjoy. I think this is going to be a very valuable episode. I appreciate you making time today to tune in. Today's topic is that distractions destroy our work. The title is Your Distractions Keep You Broke. We have to actively silence our distractions. But how? That's what we're going to discuss in this show, in this episode. So let's get right into it. If you think about it, we live in such a noisy, busy, and distracted world in this day and age. So much so that it affects our art, our businesses, our self. And here's the thing. We're surrounded by so many screens, like our phones, monitors at work, TVs, advertisement, billboards, and we can be reached at any time through our phones, texts, calls, emails, notifications, ding, 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 ring, 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 so many notifications. It's a wonder how anyone gets anything done, honestly. We're so bombarded, overwhelmed with this information overload. And it gets to the point that it's so overloading, we need to learn to effectively filter this information and only receive what's necessary. And because there's so much information to take in, it's so key and important to do this. So, in this episode, we are going to talk about organizing and restricting information in our busy world so that we can apply that as musicians, producers, composers, entrepreneurs. So let's get into it. So first off, how do we overcome these problems of information overload? And what are some examples? When we say like extraneous or useless information or unnecessary information, what are we actually talking about? Well, some examples I could think of would include TikTok, doom scrolling, celebrity gossip, and just, like silly YouTube videos and stuff. These are kind of, again, extraneous, not necessarily useful. Typically just for entertainment purposes that, when consumed in excess, again, just kind of overload our brains and distract us. Now, the problems with this kind of information is that we lose focus, we don't create art and music, we get distracted from it. It takes away our ability and our time to control when we create, and that's a problem. How often have we just pulled up our cell phone, maybe like during a studio session or something, or a recording session, whatever the case may be, and then we're immediately just scrolling for 10, 15, 20 minutes. We just lost all that time. That is seriously affecting our art, our abilities, our mental focus. So that's why we have to change the way we receive information, and we're pulled in every direction by just our phone, really. That's one big thing. Every time it dings or lights up or vibrates, we just impulsively pick it up. So, what are some ways that we can overcome these distractions and this information overload? Well, I've got a few practicals here. So, if you're taking notes, get out your notepad. If you're taking mental notes, just be on the lookout. Just listen good here. So, how do we overcome distractions and information overload? Well, step one is we can design our environment. And when I say designing our environment, I literally do mean where we work, live, play, eat, etc. But I also mean the things that are around us. For example, like our office, our computer, our desk, our cell phones, our digital spaces, right? Um, Designing those environments to cut out these unnecessary bits of information. For example, on your phone or your computer, your devices, we can utilize do not disturb. And on some modern devices, we can control what actually goes through that filter. So, for example, I have my wife on emergency bypass or whatever it is on the cell phone, Apple iPhone. So even when I'm on Do Not Disturb, her calls and texts will still get through because that's very important to me. But everything else, I don't want to hear whatever it is. So utilize Do Not Disturb on your devices. That's one way we can design our environment. Another really important key point to designing our environment is that we can make only the best choices available. What do I mean by that? Well, we're in our office. Let's say it's like at work, and maybe there's like someone brings like donuts every day or bagels or something. It's going to be really difficult to not grab one from time to time if that's available. But let's take like our home offices for example. If we've got like soda and snacks and whatever in our home office, why don't we just restrict the only option to be water? It's not like you can't have snacks, obviously. You can keep those in the kitchen or whatever. But we really need to make sure we are helping our future by limiting our choices. And really, if we make only the best choice, the only choice, then we're going to be getting a lot better results and we're going to avoid unnecessary distractions and bad habits. So small choices like those can make big future impacts. Another way we can design our environment, I don't know if it hits home for a lot of producers, musicians, creatives, although I suspect it does because it has for me. Removing video games from your work computer or laptop. Think about it. If you're creating music on the same device you're playing video games, then every time you sit down in that chair to work or you get on your laptop or your desktop, your brain is going to ask you, okay, so what are we doing? We playing video games? Are we making music? What? And when you're creating music, your brain's going to constantly tell you like, hey, there's always that option of video games available. Like, why don't we play some? So I highly recommend getting a console if you can. Again, just separating like video games, if you even play video games, for example, from your work device and the device that you get entertainment from. And the last key point on helping to overcome these distractions and designing our environment is design specific spaces for specific uses. Now, we talked a little bit about this in episode 1, but I'm going to continue this, pick it back up here. So, for example, your studio, your workspace. Only create music in your studio. Don't eat, don't play video games, because again, if you're eating in your studio, you don't want the place that you work to also be the place that you eat, because a few things can happen. You might sit down and be like, well, okay, are we eating? Are we working? Or if your kitchen tables where you also do work, then you're going to sit down for dinner and you're like, okay, wait, am I eating? Am I working? Like, where's the end to this work-life balance? So design specific spaces for specific uses. Only create music in your studio. Now, I get it. Some of us may not have a lot of space. We might only have one room to work in, and that's fine. If that's the case, then dedicate specific objects to specific uses. So, for example, this is my writing chair, or this is my music desk. I only write music here. Try to get creative with your space if you've got limited space. Or I'm only going to sleep in my bed, right? I'm not going to doom scroll in my bed and just look at silly stuff unnecessarily. So again, the reason we do this is because we want to silence that voice in our head where it's like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing here? So that's why we do it. Lastly, the last point on, overcoming distractions and such is be the guy who's okay to say, or gal, whichever, I haven't kept up on the gossip lately, the celebrity gossip, right? You're okay with not doing that. You don't, every time you get an email, you have to immediately check it, etc. Be the person who's okay with, okay, yeah, I haven't kept up with the latest gossip. I haven't heard that. Because again, this is not information that's necessarily going to help you in your career at all. It might just pull you away. That's what we're trying to talk about. So, why is silence important? What is meant by silence? And there's another thing called stillness as well. So, let's learn the power of silence and stillness. Now that we've sort of talked about ways we can overcome them, why is it important? Well, first off, what is meant by silence? When we're talking about silence in this case, we do literally mean the absence of noise or voices or notifications or things that are demanding our attention. But we also mean a state of mental calmness, tranquility, in which our minds are at ease. We're clear and empty. Now, in addition to silence, so that's silence, but in addition, there's also something we refer to as stillness. Now, stillness could, yes, be physically static, like you're not moving, but it's also evening your temper before making decisions. And these are so important for us to focus and gather our thoughts properly. Now, we have to actively fight for stillness and silence. We talked about ways, using do not disturb, avoiding the news and media constantly. But it's also going to be our activities, what we do in our free time, how we recharge. And by the way, I'm not saying like, oh, we shouldn't have fun or like we can't watch TV. Of course, it's what our entertainment's for, to relax, recuperate, etc. But I wanted to share something from a book I was reading by Ryan Holiday. It's called Stillness is the Key. And essentially, so he's talking about this gentleman named Randall Stutman, who is a behind-the-scenes advisor for a lot of the biggest CEOs and executives on Wall Street. And he studied how they spend their downtime and how they recharge. The answers of his study were essentially as follows. They would sail, long-distance cycling, listening quietly to classical music, scuba diving, riding motorcycles, and fly fishing. Activities like that. So Ryan Holiday says this about the study. Quote, all these activities, he noticed, had one thing in common. An absence of voices. These were people with busy, collaborative professions. People who made countless high-stakes decisions in the course of a day. But a couple hours without chatter, without other people in their ear, where they could simply think or not think, they could recharge and find peace. They could be still even if they were moving. They could finally hear even if the sounds of a roaring river or the music of Vivaldi were there. So again, even if we say stillness, you don't have to necessarily be not moving physically. But again, it's that ability to approach our problems with a calmness, an even temper, not letting our emotions get the best of us and sitting down and just saying, okay, what am I really looking at here? So stillness and silence are superpowers, and they allow us to actually think and listen. So when we refer to silence, yes, you can probably hear things you didn't hear before, literally, but you get to organize your thoughts as well. Consider things. Ryan Holiday also says in The Obstacle is the Way, let's look for angles, not angels. Well, I think he actually says it, let's stop looking for angels and start looking for angles. But the point is, let's stop looking for luck and actually consider ways we can solve our problems and find solutions. So the thing is, though, the payout might not always be instant, but you will be surprised how good the payout is in the long run. And the reason it might not be instant, we actually might kind of get penalty in a way for stillness and silence, really, because we're going to uncover some things that are difficult. We maybe didn't want to see. We've been trying to push them off. So in the beginning, you might think, oh, well, I'm taking a bunch of steps back. Sometimes you got to shift into reverse if you're going to go back on the right path, okay? So it might be unfortunate in the beginning. We might hear or uncover things that we were trying to push under the rug or forget about. But ultimately, that's the first step to solving all of these issues. We need to earnestly look at them. So cultivate stillness and silence. So to summarize, let's go through everything. Let's just summarize here. Due to our busy and noisy and crazy lives in this modern day and age, we have to learn to actively filter unnecessary information. To overcome these distractions, we can utilize Do Not Disturb on our devices. We can make small decisions now that make big impacts in future decisions, like removing video games from our computers or just removing certain apps. And then finally, designing specific spaces for specific uses. Using stillness and silence, we can actually gather ourselves and analyze life's problems. This is a learned skill that takes time and it has great payout, I guarantee. So that is the content and the information I have for this episode. Thank you for tuning in and for listening. I really hope you got something out of this. If you have questions, comments, concerns, check the show notes for ways to communicate. I would love to hear your feedback on this episode and many others, and maybe questions you're dealing with, because let's be honest, as artists, musicians, composers, producers, we sort of feel alone, like we're on an island, like we can't talk about these issues out in the open, but they're very real for us. And I want to hear about stories and things that we're going through. Perhaps if you want to talk about them on a show, or if not, indicate, send a voice memo, send an email, send a message. Would love to hear from you. Thank you for tuning in. If you like the show, remember to leave a review and have a great day. Thank you.